My name is George Mahashe ya Balobedu. Ke Mogoni, Mokhalaga, Mudau, To, ke Molobedu, Trovela. For the production, I have been a consultant for issues of history, as well as to help with whatever issues that might need research. So I am a research consultant. Modjadji, I have been plagued, arrested, fascinated, humbled by the story of Modjadji and Balobedu. And after visiting my great-grandmother, Magoma Bodiake, in 2006, I have been researching aspects of Balobedu. So researching everything from their history, their representation in different media, photography, literature, as well as their material culture in museums. When I went to visit my grandmother, I could not hear half of the things she said because I was not used to hearing the sounds, but also at that time I realized I only spoke with Kilobedu sounds and not necessarily Kilobedu vocabulary. So over the last maybe since 2015, I used to be a convener of the Anthropology Museum at Wits University, where anthropologists that spent time in Balobedu had some of their collection. I have had the pleasure of hosting different people interested in the establishment of Kilobedu as an official language or as a language with a standard orthography. So my interest in the language is to understand where it comes from, in a sense that the one we speak today is influenced a lot by decisions made during the Bantustan of Leboa, but also a lot of what we know about Kilobedu, in addition to what we learn at home, which is a lot, comes from early writings by missionaries, state ethnologists, anthropologists, and just people just wanting a really lovely story. As a lot of people will know, the reason Balobedu are popular in the way we are is because there has been many stories told about Balobedu, especially Modjadji, the queen that they call a rain queen, and why Nisabul. So I hope people will learn that the story of Balobedu is not straightforward. It is a story that twists and turns, and when you think you know it, you will learn something else. This year I've learned more just doing research for understanding how this story is laid out. I've learned more about Kilobedu than I learned in 4 years of doing a PhD and 2 years of doing a master's. And the reality is, when you think you know a story, you find out there's 5 other stories that are as old as the one you know. I mean, I'm not a linguist, but I am a scholar of Kilobedu, meaning that I have to read the linguists. I have to read everything around Kilobedu. The issue of the V and the B, from what I've seen, comes from a conundrum that the anthropologist Eileen Kreger and her husband Jack Kreger, who spent time in Balobedu between 1930 and around 1980, coming and going over time, had when they had to render Balobedu history written. And they had a problem because while many people spoke different varieties of Sesotho, when they were going into the histories, into the culture, words and sounds that don't exist in Sesotho appeared. And they really could not write it down. And the V and the B is just one of the issues. And as they were going through this problem of how do we write this down, because if we use a V, it might not be correct. If we use a B, it might not be correct. How do we fix it? And one of the solutions they came up with was suggested by state ethnologist Van Vamalo, who was responsible for standardizing some of these languages that they were trying to control. And he suggested to them that they could use Sesotho vowels and Venda consonants or vice versa. And the solution they came up with was to use a special character which, for rendering that the name of that that V, I would have to look at my phone. But they used a character that looks like a V and it looks like a B. But in reality, it looks like a very elegant, ornate U, to render Lovedu. And for the very longest of time, all textual references to Balobedu used the V instead of the B. From what I understand, the B comes in as the Leboa Bantustan started standardizing, and of course its later standardizations under democracy. Then Kilobedu was standardized in line with Sepedi and Northern Sotho sort of standards, which then required a B. And another story that broke my heart when I was doing my master's research was Mkhalave, that I will not name, who was involved in the standardization of Kilobedu, who said a lot of Kilobedu words were removed because they were not elegant according to Sepedi, which for me broke my heart, because a lot of what is our language was removed because they could not be rendered elegantly ka orthography ya Sepedi. And this comment is reinforced by people like Mojela, who has written, Dr. Mojela is a linguist who has written extensively about how languages like Kilobedu, Sipulani, Sepalabora were marginalized as they were standardizing Sepedi and later Northern Sotho. The language, like many other languages in the northeast of Limpopo, comes from what some people would say the Karanga or Kalanga region. And of course, that's a complicated term because many people have that lineage. But most of the histories puts us in the Zimbabwe region, the Venda region. So the story goes, Balobedu came, and some people take it as high up as Ethiopia and the Congo and the Sudan. But for the immediate moment, Balobedu's language comes from the Bakalaga or the Karanga complex. So Kilobedu actually abuzana ke Kilodzwi Rebalodzwi. Kilobedu is just a modern name that comes with colonialism and our interaction with Bapedi, Batsonga, Bavenda, many other groups. South Africa batho ba sebela. So Rebalodzwi, some would say, is related to the Rozwi. It's still too complicated to unpack for me, because I do see so even myself. So the language comes with us as we move back to where we've always been. So it's also important we didn't just come. We came back to places that we've always been coming to. So Kilobedu Kegwa, the Rozwi Karanga complex, just as Kivenda Likona Kegwana Gua, just as aspects of Bapedi Lebatswana also comes from there. So but all these languages developed differently. I think to say the language has evolved would be a little bit too politically incorrect. The language, of course, has evolved. The language that those that are lucky enough to still speak proper Kilobedu at home speak. That language has evolved. It has taken in new words from Xitsonga, Xivenda, Sepedi, etc., etc. So the language has grown. But in reality, Kilobedu has stagnated, or rather officially, formally, Kilobedu has been colonized by aspects of Sepedi, which is a beautiful language, it's a very beautiful language, and Northern Sotho, that only contains, according to some scholars, 2% of Kilobedu. So to say Kilobedu that we speak today has evolved would be incorrect. It has been hijacked by standardization politics that did not include enough Balobedu.